1 August 2020, and I'm joined by Mr. Kalipani Pugeni, spokesman for the MDC-T. How are you, sir?
I'm okay. How are you, Kambakwe? Good evening to you and to the listeners at home.
I want us to go straight into the topic for today. You put out a press statement this week saying that the nominations that were done in Harare were null and void. Can you explain more about those nominations?
I've got nothing more to explain. You will appreciate that the Tuesday before the touted nominations happened, the president of the country, His Excellency President Mnangagwa, made a directive in combating the corona pandemic and said no more political gatherings are allowed. And the very same Tuesday, I had issued, in fact, I had done a press conference to the effect that we can no longer hold our extraordinary Congress. And we have since instructed our lawyers to go to the Supreme Court for variation. And then the next day, you saw the statement. Have done a nomination. Then the chairperson wrote a message and basically nullified that process for want of due process. And he said it's inconsequential. You will appreciate that I said in that resolution, it was a unanimous position of the standing committee. So I think it's enough for the purposes of communicating the resolutions of the standing committee. Last week in our interview, I made it clear to you that I communicate on behalf of the party. I don't necessarily communicate on behalf of individuals. There were processes that we needed to do leading up to the 31st of July. But as soon as that became practically impossible and legally impossible to hold that extraordinary Congress, there is nothing much we can do except to wait for direction from the Supreme Court on that variation application that we did. But of course, there are processes like cleaning up our delegate list and getting the whole machinery ready, yes. But in terms of processes, you can't, because before you know when you can successfully hold or when you can hold that extraordinary Congress, there are processes, especially in particular the one who are speaking to the nomination. It cannot happen because you need to know when the Congress is going to be held so that you know that this process will start at this time and end at this time. This is our extraordinary Congress goes, is that we will open up the nomination period for people to nominate those that they would wish to be presidents of the party or to be president, in this case, of the party. And then once that nomination is done and those who are successful in the nomination will then be listed as our candidates. And then we will have that extraordinary Congress, the venue and the verification of delegates. When the delegates arrive, and then the Congress is opened. Obviously, the acting president gives a speech and then explain the Supreme Court judgment and why we're gathered there. And then after that, then we will have our elections.
Then I saw that the MDC-T applied to court for a variation of the Congress date, extraordinary Congress date. And in that application, you asked for an extension of the date. What date are you anticipating to hold this Congress?
The standing committee go and ask for a variation in this way, that the implementation of the judgment or the execution of the judgment kicks in after the restrictions have been lifted. So the standing committee then was guided by its legal team, and the legal team said that will sound like an indefinite variation. So they then advised us that we will need to calculate a reasonable time that we think COVID restrictions would have been lifted. And then we judge that time to be around about 7 months too. That's what we have requested from the Supreme Court, but these are court processes. I'm sure by now you know that NC has filed an application to challenge that variation application, or he has indicated that he's going to challenge that application. So court processes are court processes. We do not know what will be the final determination of the court. So on Thursday, we had a case management conference before a senior judge in the Supreme Court. I forget the name. I've got it written somewhere. So we had that case management conference. Those are the preliminaries processes before the case is heard in a public court. So we agreed when they are going to file their papers and we file our answering, then we file our heads of arguments. I think we will conclusively have a court date anytime after the 20th of August. Yes, it is around about the 20th of August. After the 20th of August, we will be able to get a court date when this matter can be heard in a public court. So basically, yes, as they hear our arguments why we need a variation, they will also be hearing his arguments why we should not get a variation.
And in that variation application, I saw that the MDC-T was proposing that if the 7 months elapse, then the party would like to consider other ways of electing a president. What other optional ways of electing a president were discussed by the National or Standing Committee?
No, I'm not aware of any other ways of electing a president. So no, I will be lying to you and to the nation. I really do not know about that prayer.
Okay, but I saw it in the documents, your own court documents. So maybe we can discuss that next week when you have,
yes, yeah, maybe give me an opportunity to then check with leadership and legal counsel. I do not know.
And now let's go to the issue of the replacement of recalled MPs and senators. Has that been resolved?
Yeah. No, that matter, as you know, we spoke about it at length last week. Really, there is nothing much to it. And even the list which you are clamoring for, which I said I'll give you, it's not even stopped by what you were insinuating. What is happening is that you've got 2 provinces that have since raised an issue with their provincial processes, not even with the people involved at the standing committee level, with their provincial processes. So it is at that level that we as the standing committee are looking at what they've raised and trying to separate valid concerns and what could be just normal politics contestations. And when we're done with that process, and that should be, I anticipate that during this week, we should be done with that process. So within 7 days or so, I'll give you the list of those names.
I would like to end by saying, do you think people should have confidence in the MDC-T, given all the things that are happening now, especially around the replacements of MPs and also the nominations?
Well, I'm not sure what is alarming there in the recall of MPs and replacement of the same.
It has taken over 3 weeks for a list of the people who have replaced the recalled MPs. And now we have the problem with the nomination process where leaders within your own party are claiming to have been nominated. And yet the standing committee is saying they're not nominated.
It didn't take over 3 weeks, by the way. Yesterday was the 2nd week. So it's not 3 weeks. So we've just gone 2 weeks. It's not even 2 weeks because it was not this past Monday, it was that other Monday when we submitted. And so the process is not that long. I think we are attaching too much value on something that is really not that much. I think everyone has a right to accept any nomination or even symbolism thereof. So I don't find anything alarming and anything worth diminishing any confidence that our people have in the party. If anything, this is a democratic party. Democratic process is taking place, and people will be confident in a party that is so transparent, that deals with matters in the manner that we are doing. That is a plus, not a negative for the party.
Okay. There's also been speculation that Dr. Khuphe is afraid that she will not get any nominations. I saw that in one of the newspaper articles this week. Is she going to get any nominations?
Well, I think anyone who thinks like that has not been following the MDC-T politics. It will be crazy to think that a leader of Dr. Khuphe's stature will not get any nominations. And if you are saying she is scared, she would have communicated that to who? Because this has nothing to do with Dr. Khuphe. I don't think you have heard her say anything. The country has been reduced into a rumor mill. So she has not communicated that to anyone. But anyone who thinks that Dr. Khuphe cannot get a nomination, then they are living in dreamland. They're about to get a shock of their lives.
Okay. So I think let us wrap it up for this week. Is there anything else you want to say before we close?
I would like to, again, speak on this issue of COVID. It's getting worse, as we can see the numbers. And wearing of mask is a must. And I've just seen a report, I think on CNN, that Dr. Brooks has said now you wear a mask and the face cover, you know, those plastic shields. It will really help, and let's avoid unnecessary trips. Let's not visit families unnecessarily. So let's just keep at home, you know, stay away from other people. By doing that, you are caring for them, but not only for them, you are saving our health infrastructure, which is not there to speak of in the first place. So as I keep on saying, if we're to face what our neighbors across the Limpopo are facing, really, this whole country, it will just be full of dead bodies. So I really appeal to us, let us do everything in our power to assist the government in mitigating against the spread of COVID. And I also appeal to the government to scale up its effort in terms of making sure that no one now does not die of the pandemic of hunger, because people are suffering out there. There is also a new pandemic, I think, of women and children abuse, because they are now locked up with these animals, men that are scared of other men, but somehow they think their masculinity means abusing women and children. So it's all those things that the government may really intervene there, and we might as well have special courts to deal with that. And those animals must be locked away, and the key must be thrown away. But really, as a country, let's fight this invisible enemy with all we have in us. And this is the time to unite. We can suspend our political differences. We'll pick them up later, because this COVID knows no political affiliation. And I don't need to explain that any further. You saw one of top executives in this country passed away this week as a result of this COVID.
Right, Mr. Pugeni, I really appreciate you joining us this week. Unfortunately, our connection was not very stable. So I want us to end it today. And I hope that next week, when we talk again, we'll be having a much clearer communication.
Okay. Cheers, my friend.